It's Corrina, your virtual health coach, and in this video, I want to tell you about a socially responsible company that has donated more than $100 million to public health organizations in the last 6 years. And I bet you're not going to be able to guess who it is. That's right, guys. It's Coca Cola. We're also going to be talking today about PepsiCo, because Pepsi also funds these various public health groups. But is this funding that public health groups are receiving from companies like Coca Cola and PepsiCo really evidence that these companies are dedicated to improving public health? Or is there maybe a little something extra we're not quite seeing? So, as you may have suspected, there is more to this story than meets the eye. One of the most telling examples of where Coca-Cola really stands on public health is the fact that they do a lot of lobbying against public health legislation. So a great example of this is the issue of a soda tax. So one of the ways that our federal government has proposed to decrease the amount of soda that Americans are consuming is that they would actually impose a soda tax, which would discourage people from drinking so much soda. Well, this is an issue that Coca-Cola and PepsiCo see as a very big problem to their bottom line. So what they actually end up doing is lobbying against that type of legislation. So they're actually trying to prevent this soda tax, and so far, they've been very effective at doing so. Another example is that Coca-Cola will actually partner up with organizations that fight obesity or try to fight for the public health. So in one side of this coin, we see Coca-Cola as a company that truly cares about the public health. However, when we actually examine these relationships more closely, we maybe actually see a wolf in sheep's clothing kind of scenario taking place. And what I mean by that is that these organizations who are receiving funding from these companies will then pull out their support of a soda tax. So essentially what we're seeing is an organization that exists to protect the public health now suddenly has a little bit more interest in helping to keep these companies happy, because these companies are giving them a significant amount of their funding. And what ends up being the problem for us as the consumer, for us as the public, is that even these organizations like the CDC or the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics are now somewhat beholden to Coca-Cola because they receive so much funding from them. And now the priority of that organization is not actually the public health, but maintaining their relationship with this very profitable company. And that is a classic example of what's called a conflict of interest. So you have your organization. On one hand, the interest is taking care of the public health. And on the other hand, you have that company's interest in receiving lots of funding. And so this is a conflict of interests, right? Because the interests of Coca-Cola and their bottom line are in conflict with the interests of our public health. So let's think about a scale, with the public health interests on one side and the private corporate interests on the other. So this is your Coca-Cola, General Mills, PepsiCo, etc. There's a lot of big food manufacturing corporations out there. And, we can just watch the scale tip. Now, what's the main thing that tips the scale? In this current situation, in this current climate that we're living in, it's money that's tipping the scale. Right? And so clearly these private corporations have a lot of money to tip the scale with. And if we wanted to ask ourselves, well, how could we start to tip the scale back the other way? How can we stop these conflicts of interest? Well, that's a pretty important question. But in my opinion, our lives, our health, our very ability to live the lifestyle that we want to live is exactly what's hanging in the balance. So if we want to have any hope of tipping the scale back in favor of the public health, the big thing that needs to happen is that money is taken out of the equation. Because as long as the funds from really, really wealthy organizations are able to tip the scale out of our favor or influence these organizations that are supposed to be protecting public health to not protect the public health so much. It's this funding from these companies. Another way that these companies are able to use their money to affect the public health is by something called lobbying. So this is where representatives that work for the corporation, work for Pepsi or work for Coca Cola, actually go and do what's called lobbying our politicians. So what that means is they go down to the Capitol, right? They go down, they are having meetings with our governmental officials, and in a lot of cases, what they end up finding is that there's downright bribery going on between lobbyists and governmental officials. There's also, again, this kind of insidious, I'll make a campaign contribution to you. And the problem is kind of reverting back to that idea of the conflict of interest, which is that once this company gives you a huge amount of money, now suddenly you're a little bit more concerned with doing things that are good for that company. And if you're a governmental official who's supposed to be working in the interest of the public, right, we get that conflict of interest. And again, I really see it as a wolf in sheep's clothing who's coming in there and using their vast amount of money that they've made, making us incredibly obese, using that money to then influence our public officials to essentially perpetuate this obesity problem. It's already estimated that 1/5 of our healthcare spending goes to obesity and conditions associated with obesity. So literally 1/5 of the money that our government is spending on healthcare is going towards the obesity problem. But what's one of the biggest factors in the obesity problem? So maybe we can start to see, number one, why nutrition information is so confusing. So here you have Corrina, the health coach, sitting here telling you that sodas are one of the main reasons that we can't lose weight, and that cutting sodas out of your diet is probably one of the easiest ways to significantly start shedding pounds. All right, if you did one thing, which was to stop drinking sodas or just slightly work to reduce the amount of sodas you consume, you would be dropping pounds. So let's just imagine for a moment a world where we, the public, are receiving accurate information about how dangerous sodas are. If suddenly there was maybe a warning label on the soda, or they were packaging sodas in smaller cans, this is one of those actually public health legislations that they've been trying to implement, which is actually that sodas would not be available in such large containers. Well, they've been fighting that for a long time, and very effectively so. But if suddenly we, the American people, were to drink significantly less sodas, chances are we would see that the obesity epidemic becomes less of a problem, right? I'm arguing that if we drank less sodas, we would have less obesity. We would have less diabetes, we would have less heart disease, all of these different issues associated with obesity and overweight. So if I was right and reducing our soda consumption actually reduced the prevalence of obesity, it would actually end up saving the government money. Again, 1/5 of the healthcare spending is spent on obesity. So we can start to see that maybe these cozy relationships between private companies and public health organizations, some of which are related to our government and some of which are not, these cozy relationships, though, are posing a very, very big challenge to the public health. And on a personal level, our own personal ability to reach our health and weight loss goals, whatever they might be. So at this point, you're probably thinking, well, great, Corrina. What do you want me to do about it? Why did you just waste 10 minutes of my life telling me this? All right, so here's your take-home message. Number one, on a personal level, just understand that this whole problem of lobbying and conflicts of interest is a big reason that nutrition information is so confusing, right? Here you have Corrina the health coach telling you one thing, but then if you see an ad on television, maybe it tells you that high fructose corn syrup is healthier than sugar or something like that. And I remember that ad. That was many years ago, and I ended up being very confused by that and went and looked it up, and sure enough, that ad was funded by the Corn Refiners Association of America. So here you have a company with a financial interest in making people eat more corn products, coming out and funding advertisements that are going to tell you that high fructose corn syrup is healthy for you. So just understand that a lot of the information out there, and especially the information on the front of food labels and stuff like that, is really just not coming from a place of your health prioritized. It's coming from a place of their bottom line prioritized. And again, that's a big reason why nutrition information is so confusing. And from a political perspective, we could look at trying to solve these problems presented by lobbying and conflicts of interest. Now, that's really a topic for a whole other video, but there are organizations out there that are working to try and solve this problem, or at least create an environment where the public health is being protected by the people who are supposed to be protecting it. Anyways, guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this video, and I really hope that you found this information interesting or helpful in some way. If you have video requests or questions, I really hope that you will leave those for me below in the comments area, and I hope that you'll subscribe to Psychetruth so you can come back and join us for all of our videos. We've got workouts, yoga, nutrition, lots of different topics. We really are dedicated to giving you as much information as we can to help you take control of your health and happiness. So thank you for watching, and I really look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye for now.